Hi folks. In today's tech tip, I wanted to take a little bit of time to highlight something called Google NGram Viewer. Now, NGram Viewer is basically an analytical tool that allows us to find out about how frequently specific words or phrases were used in a body of literature, so say for example the English language, over a given period of time. So it allows us to graph how the commonality or the frequency of its usage has increased or decreased over time. It's based on Google Books, and Google Books currently, I think, has scanned around 40 million titles, and they believe there are around about 130 million titles in the public domain. So they still have to scan quite a lot. So it's not to say that NGram Viewer will be able to analyze all of the text that has ever existed, but it will go through a fairly large chunk of it. So I think it probably at this stage at 40 million titles will give you a pretty representative picture of how frequently certain words have been used. And as I say, I find this really fascinating, and it's something that I think that your pupils might find quite interesting, or that you might be able to use as part of maybe a language or history lessons to kind of help people kind of understand the way that language changes or how the popularity of things changes. So if we search NGram Viewer, then just click on here, we will get our default, which just starts with these kind of phrases to get you thinking about how it works. And it graphs them here, as you can see, on a scale where we have the start date and the end date, or year, should I say, and that's chosen up here. Now, you can actually go as far back as 1500, but the most recent you can go currently is 2019. So we can track how that changes over time, and we can choose up here the corpus. So by default, it's in English, which I believe incorporates all three of these below, but then there are other ones for different languages further down. We can choose case sensitivity as well. So if we want to, say, for example, search just, for example, Albert Einstein and make it case insensitive, it will show us the results for the various ways that it sees Albert Einstein being or having case applied to it. So we've got it with all caps or just with titles being capitalized. The first letter being capitalized. Now, we can do a couple of other things, like, for example, we can change the smoothing of the responses. So if we just click on here, we can choose the weighting of that. So if we make it 0, you'll see that your graph's going to get a lot more spiky. And if you increase the smoothing, it maybe makes it a little bit more easy to draw out kind of longer term trends. So that can be quite handy. And another thing to be aware of is that you can input a range of different phrases or terms. So for example, we could search lorry, comma, truck, and search for those together. And you'll see that it will basically graph them both together for you. Now, beyond that, if you wanted to learn how to use this a little bit more carefully, there are some other wee kind of tricks that you can use. If you go back to the initial search results page here, if you go to NGram info, there's a lot of information in here about how to use this in a bit more of a sort of sophisticated way if you're doing some research. There's a lot of tools that you can use to expand essentially what it'll look for and the analytical response that you'll get. So if you're interested in using this a little bit more thoroughly for a kind of research purpose, then you can go in here and you can have a wee look at the instructions that are provided. It's all reasonably straightforward. One of the things I found quite interesting was if you were looking at it maybe from a business perspective, you could talk about, say a specific thing. You could look at how commonly a word is being used. So for example, we could search gin, and we could look at that over time and maybe pick out over, say, the last since 2000, for example. And that will give us a kind of a sense of whether the popularity of that thing might be increasing or decreasing, because we tend to see a kind of a trend upwards or downwards. Whereas if I go to tacos, we'll see that probably that's becoming more and more common. If we go and search at other things, it will kind of give us a sense of whether it's becoming less or more popular. So it's just quite an interesting little tool. Language is obviously really important to a lot of different areas of the curriculum, so maybe you'll come up with your own clever way to integrate it into a lesson. But in any case, if you've got any questions or if you've got any of your own suggestions for tech tips, do let us know.